The warning lights flashed red across the mining vessel Perseverance's bridge, bathing everything in a crimson glow. Captain Pete looked at the emergency readings with wide eyes. The reactor core temperature was rising fast. Too fast. "Engineering, report. What's happening down there?" he shouted into the comm system. Chief Engineer Tom Miller's voice came back, breathless and urgent. "Captain, we've got a major problem. The cooling system is failing, and the backup isn't responding. I'm heading to the reactor chamber now." "Negative, Tom. The radiation levels are already beyond safety limits. Wait for the automated systems tow." "Sir," Tom cut in, "the automated systems are dead. If someone doesn't manually activate the emergency containment protocols, we're all going to die. The whole ship will go up." The Perseverance wasn't just any mining vessel. She carried a crew of 50 good people, all of whom had families waiting back on Earth. Tom knew every single one of them. He'd shared meals with them, fixed their quarters' heating systems, and helped design safety protocols to keep them alive in deep space. The ship's AI spoke in its calm, emotionless voice. "Warning. Reactor breach imminent. Radiation levels at 300% of maximum survivable threshold. Time to critical failure. 4 minutes, 27 seconds. Tom ran through the emergency corridors, his boots clanging against the metal floor. The radiation warning signs grew more intense as he approached the reactor chamber. His personal detector was screaming warnings, but he ignored them. Someone had to do this, and he was the only one who knew the reactor system well enough to pull it off. "Tom, don't do this," Captain Pete's voice crackled through his comm. "The radiation levels, they're off the charts. No human has ever survived exposure like that." "Then I'll be the first," Tom replied, forcing a grin even though no one could see it. "Besides, my ex-wife always said I was too stubborn to die." He reached the reactor chamber's outer door. The warning systems were flashing every color of danger possible. The ship's AI spoke again. "Warning. Entering this area at current radiation levels carries 100% fatality probability. Death will occur within 10 to 15 minutes of exposure. Please evacuate immediately." Tom took a deep breath and placed his hand on the scanner. "Override safety protocols. Authorization. Miller, Thomas J., Chief Engineer." The door hissed open, releasing a wave of heat. The reactor core pulsed an angry blue-white ahead of him, spewing invisible death into the air. His radiation badge instantly turned black, useless now, as the levels were far beyond what it could measure. He moved quickly, focusing on his training rather than the burning sensation that was already beginning to crawl across his skin. The manual containment controls were on the far side of the chamber. Each step felt heavier than the last. "Radiation exposure at critical levels," the AI announced. "Cellular damage occurring at unprecedented rate. Medical intervention will be futile. Please evacuate immediately." Tom reached the control panel. His hands were shaking, but his mind remained clear. He began the sequence, watching as each system responded to his commands. The reactor's angry pulse began to steady. "Come on, you beautiful disaster," he muttered, typing in the final commands. "Time to calm down." The reactor's light dimmed slightly, and the temperature readings began to drop. Tom smiled, even as he felt the radiation burning through his body. He'd done it. The ship and crew would be safe. He turned to leave but stumbled. His legs weren't working right anymore. The room spun around him as he fell against the wall. "Containment protocols successfully activated," the AI announced. "Reactor stabilizing. Warning. Human life signs detected in chamber. Fatal radiation exposure confirmed. Medical assistance required immediately." Captain Pete's voice came through the comm, thick with emotion. "Tom, you crazy bastard. You did it. Hold on, we're calling for help. There's a medical ship in the sector. Tell them." Tom coughed, tasting metal. "Tell them to hurry. I'm not planning on dying today." The last thing Tom saw before losing consciousness was the reactor's soft blue glow, now safely contained behind emergency fields. As darkness took him, he smiled. He'd saved them all. Now he just had to survive the impossible. The alien medical ship Life Giver dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Perseverance, its sleek white hull gleaming against the darkness of space. Dr. Blue stood at the command center, their tall, slender form towering over the holographic displays showing the human vessel's status. "Impossible," Dr. Blue muttered, their silver eyes scanning the medical readings. "These radiation levels, the human should have been dead instantly." The Life Giver was the most advanced medical vessel in this sector of space, staffed by the galaxy's finest doctors from the stellar species. They had saved countless lives across hundreds of worlds, but they had never encountered a situation quite like this. "Docking procedure initiated," announced the ship's computer. "Warning: detected radiation containment breach in human vessel. Emergency protocols active." Dr. Blue assembled their medical team quickly. "Remember, this is first contact with humans under emergency conditions. We've only studied their biology in theory. Be prepared for anything." The docking tunnel extended between the ships with a soft hiss. Captain Pete met them at the airlock, his face pale with worry. "Thank goodness you're here. Our chief engineer, he's still alive, but barely. He's in our medical bay." Dr. Blue's assistant, Medical Officer Green, checked their handheld scanner. "Sir, these readings can't be correct. According to this, the human absorbed enough radiation to kill 50 members of our species. Yet he lives," Dr. Blue said, their voice filled with professional curiosity. "Fascinating." They rushed to the Perseverance's medical bay. Tom lay on a bed, surrounded by basic human medical equipment. His skin was red and blistered, but incredibly, his vital signs still showed on the monitors. Dr. Blue approached, holding their advanced medical scanner. The device hummed as it analyzed Tom's condition. The results made the alien doctor step back in surprise. "This defies all known medical science," they announced. "His cells are being destroyed by radiation, yes, but they're also fighting back. I've never seen anything like this." Medical Officer Green checked their own readings. "Look at his neural activity. By all our understanding, he should be brain dead. But these patterns, he's still conscious." As if to prove the point, Tom's eyes fluttered open. He looked at the tall, silvery aliens around him and managed a weak smile. "You folks aren't from around here, are you?" Dr. Blue leaned forward, amazed. "You can speak. How are you even conscious?" "Someone's got to tell you how to fix me," Tom whispered. "Besides," promised the captain, "I wasn't planning on dying today." The medical team quickly transferred Tom to their ship, using a floating stretcher wrapped in a protective field. The Life Giver's medical bay was a marvel of advanced technology, with equipment that looked more like art than medical tools. "Begin full cellular restoration protocol," Dr. Blue ordered. "And someone contact the Galactic Medical Council. They need to see this." The alien machines hummed to life around Tom, scanning and treating his radiation-ravaged body. Dr. Blue watched the readings with growing amazement. The human cells were responding to treatment in ways they'd never seen before. "Sir," Medical Officer Green called out, "his tissue is actually adapting to our treatments. It's like his body is learning from the radiation damage." "Keep him stable," Dr. Blue ordered. "I need to study this. Humans are clearly more remarkable than our studies suggested." Tom drifted in and out of consciousness as the aliens worked. Each time he woke, he found more of them studying him with their silver eyes, taking readings and discussing his condition in amazed tones. "You look worried," he managed to tell Dr. Blue during one lucid moment. "Don't be. We humans, we're pretty hard to kill." Dr. Blue made a note in their medical log. "Human patients appear to maintain optimal healing conditions through something they call positive attitude. Further study required to understand this remarkable species." Dr. Blue stood before the observation window of the Life Giver's main medical bay, watching the screens display Tom's cellular activity. 3 days had passed since they brought the human aboard, and what they were seeing changed everything they thought they knew about biology. Record medical log entry. Dr. Blue spoke to their data system. Day 3 of human radiation exposure case. Subject continues to defy all known medical predictions. Medical Officer Green rushed into the room, holding a fresh set of scans. Doctor, you need to see this. The human cells, they're doing something unprecedented. On the main screen, they watched as Tom's cells fought against the radiation damage. Unlike any species they had ever encountered, the human cells weren't just trying to repair themselves. They were adapting. Magnify section C7, Dr. Blue ordered. The screen zoomed in on a cluster of cells that should have been dead. Instead, they were building new structures, creating defenses against the radiation that no one had ever seen before. It's like they're learning, Green said in wonder. Each time a cell dies, the surrounding cells adapt their defense mechanisms. They're evolving in real time. Tom lay in the medical pod, his condition still critical but stable. The angry red burns on his skin were slowly fading, replaced by new pink tissue. The medical team had expected him to die within hours, then within days. Now, they weren't sure what to expect. His pain levels must be extraordinary, one of the junior medical officers noted. Should we increase the pain suppressants? Dr. Blue checked the readings. We're already using enough suppressants to knock out a galactic beast. Yet he's still conscious periodically. Humans appear to have an amazing tolerance for pain. As if on cue, Tom opened his eyes. Doc, he called out weakly. Any chance I could get some water? The medical team rushed to his side, taking new readings as Green helped him drink. Dr. Blue noticed that even this simple act of survival seemed to strengthen the human's cellular responses. Tom, Dr. Blue said, we've been studying your recovery, your species. You're doing things we didn't think were possible. Your cells aren't just healing, they're becoming stronger. Tom managed a weak laugh. My old biology teacher used to say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Never thought it would be so literal. Dr. Blue made another note. Human healing appears to be enhanced by their ability to maintain humor in dire situations. Further research needed. The main door slid open as Captain Pete entered the medical bay. The human captain had been checking on his engineer every few hours, showing what the aliens were learning was a typical human trait: loyalty to their crew. How's our miracle man doing? Pete asked, moving to Tom's bedside. Better, Tom replied. These folks seem pretty surprised we don't die easily. Dr. Blue turned to Captain Pete. We've begun documenting everything. Your engineer's survival. It's going to change galactic medicine. We've already identified 3 new cellular defense mechanisms we never knew were possible. That's Tom for you, Pete said proudly. Always teaching somebody something new. The medical bay's computer suddenly chimed with an alert. New scans showed Tom's bone marrow was now producing modified white blood cells, ones specifically designed to handle radiation exposure. Incredible, Green whispered. His body isn't just fighting the damage, it's preparing for future radiation exposure. It's like his entire system refuses to be beaten by the same thing twice. Dr. Blue watched the screens with growing excitement. Years of medical knowledge were being rewritten before their eyes. Humans weren't just tough. They were adaptable in ways that defied explanation. You know, Tom said from his bed, his voice a little stronger. On Earth, we have these things called cockroaches. Everyone says they could survive anything. Guess humans aren't so different. The medical team looked at each other in confusion, not understanding the reference. But they understood one thing clearly. They were witnessing something that would change galactic medicine forever. All because one human was too stubborn to die. 1 week into Tom's treatment, alarms blared through the Life Giver's medical bay. Dr. Blue rushed in to find her patient convulsing, his vital signs spiraling downward. He's crashing. Medical Officer Green shouted, hands flying over the control panels. The radiation damage is reaching his major organs. Dr. Blue moved quickly to the medical pod. The screen showed Tom's internal systems finally beginning to fail, exactly as they had predicted days ago. But the fact that it had taken this long still amazed them. "Start Emergency Protocol 7, Dr. Blue ordered. "Prepare the experimental regeneration chamber." Captain Pete burst into the medical bay, having heard the alarms from his temporary quarters. "What's happening to him?" "His body is finally giving in to the radiation damage," Dr. Blue explained, their silver eyes fixed on the readings. "By all medical science, this should have happened days ago. Your engineer's determination has kept him alive far longer than possible." Tom's eyes snapped open suddenly, his hand gripping the side of the medical pod. "Not dying today," he gasped between spasms. "Still got work to do back on the ship." Dr. Blue's assistant checked the brain scans. "Sir, look at this. His adrenaline levels are rising. They're actually strengthening his cellular responses." "Impossible," Dr. Blue muttered, but they'd said that word so many times this week it had lost all meaning. The stress hormone should be making things worse, not better. They watched in amazement as Tom's vital signs began to stabilize, not because of their treatments, but seemingly through sheer force of will. His heart rate steadied, and his brain activity showed patterns they'd never seen before. "I need to try something," Dr. Blue announced. "It's dangerous, but at this point..." They turned to Captain Pete. "We have an experimental treatment. It's never been tested on humans. The risk is enormous." Pete looked at his engineer, his friend, fighting for life. "Tom's already done the impossible. Ask him." Dr. Blue leaned over the medical pod. "Tom, listen carefully. We have a treatment that might help, but it's extremely dangerous. No one has ever survived it before." Tom managed a weak smile. "First time for everything, Doc. Besides, humans are pretty good at doing the impossible." The medical team quickly prepared the experimental chamber. It looked like a giant crystal tube filled with swirling blue energy. As they transferred Tom into it, Dr. Blue noticed something extraordinary on the monitors. "His body is already adapting to the treatment," they announced in wonder. "Before we've even started it." Green checked the readings. "This is unprecedented. It's like his cells remember every treatment we've tried and are preparing for this one." The chamber hummed to life, filling with energy that would either save Tom or kill him instantly. The medical team watched anxiously as the human's body was bathed in the experimental radiation. "Cell death rates dropping," Green reported. "Organ function stabilizing. It's working." Dr. Blue made another entry in their medical log. "Human capacity for survival appears to be directly linked to their emotional state and determination. When told something is impossible, they seem to take it as a personal challenge." Hours passed as they monitored the treatment. Tom remained conscious far longer than any other species could have, occasionally giving thumbs-up signals through the chamber's crystal walls. "I've never seen anything like this," one of the junior medical officers said. "It's like he's too stubborn to let the radiation win." Dr. Blue nodded. "I'm beginning to think that's exactly what's happening. These humans, they don't just survive. They fight back against death itself." As the treatment continued, the medical team realized they weren't just saving a life. They were witnessing the birth of an entirely new understanding of what was possible in medicine. And it was all because one human engineer had decided that dying simply wasn't on his schedule for the day. News of Tom's survival had spread across the galaxy. The Life Giver's medical bay was now crowded with alien doctors and scientists from a dozen different species, all coming to witness what they'd been told was impossible. Dr. Blue stood at the center of a group of distinguished medical experts, pointing to a holographic display of Tom's cellular structure. "As you can see, the human cells aren't just surviving. They're thriving. They've developed completely new defense mechanisms against radiation." A tall, purple-skinned medical expert from the Centauri system waved one of their 4 arms in disbelief. "But this violates every principle of biological adaptation we know." Cells cannot simply create new protection systems in real time. Apparently, human cells can, Dr. Blue replied, highlighting another section of the display. Watch this recording from yesterday. A hologram showed Tom's cells actively changing their structure as new radiation threatened them. The gathered aliens watched in stunned silence as the impossible played out before their eyes. Inside the recovery chamber, Tom was now sitting up, eating what passed for hospital food in alien medicine. Glowing blue cubes that tasted surprisingly like chicken soup. His skin had almost completely healed, showing only faint traces of the radiation burns. "Your patient should be dead," announced a crystalline being from the Rigel system, their transparent body pulsing with confused colors. The radiation exposure was 15 times the lethal limit for any known species. Tom looked up from his food. "Sorry to disappoint you folks," he said with a grin. "But we humans don't like being told what we can't survive." Medical Officer Green hurried into the room with new scan results. "Doctor, you need to see this. The human's bone marrow isn't just producing radiation-resistant cells anymore. It's actually improving on our treatment protocols." Dr. Blue examined the new data. Tom's body had taken the experimental treatments they'd used and had somehow made them more efficient. His cells were now using the healing energy in ways the aliens hadn't even thought possible. "It's like they're rewriting our medical techniques," Dr. Blue marveled. "Everything we thought we knew about cellular repair is being challenged." A delegation from the Galactic Medical Council arrived, their formal robes sweeping the floor as they moved to examine Tom. The head counselor, a being made of pure energy contained in a special suit, spoke in amazement. "In all our millennia of medical knowledge, we've never seen anything like this. Humans are remarkable. Their very biology defies our understanding." Tom shrugged, a very human gesture that confused several of the alien observers. "We're pretty good at that. Defying understanding, I mean. Just ask any human teacher." Dr. Blue noticed something else in the latest scans. "Look at this," they called to the assembled experts. "His cellular structure isn't just resistant to radiation now. It's actually stronger than before the accident. He's healthier than when he arrived." The medical bay erupted in excited discussion. Species that had been practicing medicine for thousands of years were watching their most basic assumptions about life and death being completely rewritten by one human's stubborn refusal to die. "I have a theory," Dr. Blue announced to the gathered experts. "Human survival rates might be directly linked to their mental state. Their determination to live actually changes their body's ability to heal." The Galactic Medical Council members looked at each other in astonishment. If true, this would revolutionize their understanding of medicine across all species. "Is this common among humans?" one of them asked Tom. "Pretty much," Tom replied, finishing his glowing blue food. "We're all kind of stubborn that way. Speaking of which, any chance I can get back to work soon? That reactor isn't going to maintain itself." The alien stared at him in disbelief. Here was a being who had survived the unsurvivable, rewritten the laws of biology, and all he could think about was getting back to work. Dr. Blue made another note in their ever-growing research log. "Humans appear to treat the impossible as merely a temporary inconvenience. Further study definitely required." 2 weeks after the reactor incident, Tom stood up from his medical bed for the first time. The assembled alien medical staff watched nervously, their instruments tracking every movement. Dr. Blue hovered nearby, ready to help if needed. "Easy now," Dr. Blue cautioned. "Your body has been through changes we still don't fully understand." Tom took his first steps carefully, then with growing confidence. "Feels good to be vertical again," he said, stretching his arms. "Though I've got to admit, I'm surprised all my parts still work." The medical monitors showed something remarkable. Tom's muscle strength was actually greater than before the accident. His enhanced cells had rebuilt his body to be more resilient than ever. "The human diplomatic vessel has arrived," Medical Officer Green announced, entering the room. "They're quite eager to meet the man who rewrote medical science." Through the medical bay's large observation window, They could see a sleek Earth ship docking alongside the Life Giver. It bore the symbol of the newly formed Human Medical Exchange Program. "Just what we need," Tom joked. "More people watching me like I'm some kind of science experiment." Dr. Blue was reviewing the final medical scans on their holographic display. "According to these readings, your body has not only healed but has developed permanent adaptations. You could probably handle twice the radiation exposure now." "Let's not test that theory," Tom replied with a laugh. Once was enough. The doors slid open as the human medical delegation entered. They were led by Dr. Anna Roberts, Earth's leading expert in xenomedicine. Her eyes widened as she saw Tom walking around. "When we got the report, we thought it was a translation error," she said, shaking her head in amazement. "The radiation levels they described, no one could survive that." Apparently, Dr. Blue said, no one informed the patient of that fact. The human and alien medical teams gathered around the central display as Dr. Blue presented their findings. The hologram showed the progression of Tom's cellular changes over the past 2 weeks. "As you can see," Dr. Blue explained, "the human body didn't just fight the radiation damage, it adapted to it, created new defense mechanisms we didn't think were possible. It's completely changed our understanding of biological resilience." Dr. Roberts studied the data with growing excitement. "This could revolutionize our treatment of radiation exposure victims. The implications for space travel alone are enormous." Tom sat on the edge of his bed, watching the doctors discuss his case. Captain Pete stood beside him, having come to check on his engineer one last time before returning to the Perseverance. "You know," Pete said quietly, "when you ran into that reactor room, I thought I was watching you commit suicide." "Honestly," Tom replied, "so did I. But somebody had to do it." Dr. Blue overheard their conversation and made another note in their research log. "Human capability for self-sacrifice appears to enhance their survival abilities rather than diminish them." Fascinating. The Galactic Medical Council representatives were already drafting new protocols based on what they'd learned. Traditional radiation treatment methods were being revised across the galaxy. "There's just one thing I don't understand," one of the alien doctors said to Tom. "When your cells were dying, when everything indicated you should be dead, how did you keep fighting?" Tom thought for a moment. "You know how sometimes you're so focused on finishing a job that you forget to be tired? It was kind of like that. I wasn't done living yet, so my body just had to deal with it." The aliens looked confused, but the human doctors nodded in understanding. It was perhaps the most human explanation possible. Too stubborn to die because there was still work to be done. "Well," Dr. Blue announced, checking the final readings, "I believe we can officially say you're recovered. Though we'd like to keep studying these adaptations, if you're willing." Tom stood up, stronger than ever. "Study away, Doc. Just as long as I can get back to my engine room. That reactor's probably missing me by now." 6 months after the reactor incident, the Life Giver had been transformed into the galaxy's first human-alien joint medical research center. The medical bay where Tom had recovered was now a specialized study facility, with his case at the center of groundbreaking research. Dr. Blue stood at a podium in the ship's main conference hall, presenting their findings to the largest gathering of medical experts ever assembled in the sector. Behind them, a massive screen showed the now famous cellular adaptation patterns from Tom's recovery. In conclusion, Dr. Blue addressed the packed audience. "Human biological resilience isn't just about physical strength. It's about adaptability, determination, and what they call spite." They paused as the translator systems caught up. They literally refused to die out of stubbornness. In the front row, Tom sat in his engineering uniform, looking slightly uncomfortable with all the attention. He'd returned to work on the Perseverance weeks ago, but regularly visited the Life Giver for checkups and research sessions. "The reactor that nearly killed me," Tom added when Dr. Blue finished. "We've actually made it safer based on what we learned. Sometimes you have to almost die to figure out how to live better." The audience murmured in amazement. The idea of using a near-death experience as a learning opportunity was very human. After the presentation, Dr. Blue and Tom walked through the medical bay, now bustling with human and alien medical staff working side by side. The experimental treatment chamber that had helped save Tom's life had been refined and improved, ready to help others. "Did you ever think," Tom asked, "that one engineering accident would change so much?" Dr. Blue's silver eyes gleamed. "In my 300 years of medical practice, I never imagined one patient could teach us so much. We've already saved 23 lives using the treatments we developed for you." They stopped at a new addition to the medical bay, a wall display showing the Human Survival Index. It tracked remarkable cases of human endurance and recovery across the galaxy. Tom's story was at the top, but others were being added regularly. "Turns out," Tom said, looking at the display, "we humans are pretty good at surviving things we shouldn't." Medical Officer Green hurried up to them, holding a datapad. "The latest results from the Galactic Medical Survey are in," they announced excitedly. "Emergency survival rates across all species have improved by 30% since we implemented the human-inspired treatment protocols." Dr. Blue made another entry in their research log, which had become a best-selling medical text across the galaxy. Human influence on medical science extends beyond their own remarkable survival abilities. Their example inspires other species to fight harder against death. The ship's intercom crackled. "Engineer Miller to the reactor control room," Captain Pete's voice called. "Time for your shift." Tom grinned at Dr. Blue. "Duty calls." "Don't worry, Doc. I'm being extra careful these days. Though my cells probably wouldn't mind another challenge." "Please," Dr. Blue said quickly, "no more experiments with radiation. I don't think the galaxy is ready for more of your survival miracles just yet." As Tom walked away, Dr. Blue watched him go with a mixture of professional pride and personal amazement. One human's refusal to die had changed the course of medical science forever. Now, across the galaxy, doctors were learning to never underestimate their patients' will to live. The final line in Dr. Blue's research log read, "Perhaps the greatest discovery in this case was not how humans survive the impossible, but how they make the impossible seem routine." In teaching us this lesson, they have given hope to every species in the galaxy. And in the Perseverance's engine room, Tom Miller went back to work, just another human who had done the impossible and lived to tell about it. After all, someone had to keep the reactor running, and who better than the engineer too stubborn to die?